Hey everyone, welcome to Real Talk. I'm Jason Spitzer, and I hope you enjoyed this month's newsletter. We took a little hiatus, but we're back and look to bring you a newsletter every month telling you about what's happening in the market and what's happening around Tampa Bay. Everyone from our team has shared an article with our 2 cents of something that we're interested in or think is interesting and want to share with you. We've also added a section about the food and beverage scene here in St. Pete and Tampa Bay, telling you about new restaurants, things we're looking forward to, and reviews of places we've tried. So I want to dive in quickly into the market stats. As we move to spring, this is the traditional home buying season, and the market looks a little different than it has the last couple of years. COVID changed everything, as we know. It took our market through a whirlwind. We're kind of getting to the back end of that where we're normalizing. Our inventory is very low. So we've got 1.7 months worth of inventory. In a normal or balanced market, you have about 6 months of inventory. So we're still very much in a seller's market. However, things are shifting. So the inventory has gone up by about, depending how you look at it, if you look at active listings, about 91% from a year ago. If you look at months of supply, we're about 143% from about a year ago. But again, this is still incredibly limited inventory, very low levels of inventory. If you're actually looking at the overall market, traditionally, new home construction makes up about 8 to 10% of all inventory active on the market. Currently, that's about 30 to 35%. And it's because most people who own a home, or resales as we call them, are staying put. Sellers are holding on to their homes because many of them either locked in when they purchased in the last few years or refinanced in the last few years and have locked in a low interest rate. Interest rates have gone up considerably over the last year. And we saw the effect of that, particularly in the second half of last year, with the amount of showing traffic declined. Since December, as interest rates have come down a bit, showing traffic has escalated, and we're at more normal showing patterns. This normalization in our market, it's going to continue. We're expecting to see in our market still price appreciation. We're still seeing prices climb. We've got a median sale price about 450 and an average sale price about 575. We expect those numbers to continue to grow, but at a much slower pace than we did not only during the pandemic boom, but also in the normal period prior to COVID. So we're getting back to that normalization and maybe having a small, not technical correction, but a correction from where the post-COVID craziness was. We're getting back to that more normal market. With that low inventory, if you're considering selling, now is a pretty good time, particularly as interest rates continue to come down a little bit piece by piece. We're in the mid sixes and we've kind of been bouncing around there. I think 6.3 was the latest I saw, right around there, versus about a week ago we're at 6.45, 6.43. So things are improving on the interest rate front, even though the Fed raised interest rates this week, federal interest rate. That doesn't have a direct correlation to mortgage rates. And so we're expecting the mortgage rates to continue to decline through the remainder of this year and into next year. The one caveat, there are two caveats, and this also speaks to the broader economy, are the bank failures. We've seen, 4 of the largest bank failures in the U.S. history. 3 of them have happened in the last year. These are regional banks, which do affect real estate, particularly the commercial side, as well as larger mortgages. We're also seeing a compression of jumbo mortgage rates. Typically, jumbo mortgage rates would be better, or jumbo mortgages are larger mortgages, typically for luxury style homes. Those typically have a premium or a little bit cheaper than your traditional Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac approved or conventional mortgages, because they're not traded. Most of them aren't traded in the open mortgage market. They're held by banks on their portfolios. Or on their balance sheets. So they're able to offer a little bit better rate. We've seen a compression of that. So the difference between what you're seeing on conventional and jumbo is pretty small. It's the smallest delta we've seen between those two rates in quite some time. So that's putting a little bit of pressure on the luxury market. But overall, rates are improving. We can believe they'll continue. So one, to watch the bank failures. The second thing that could affect them is the debt ceiling. Everyone's expecting that Congress will do what they've always done and extend or raise the debt ceiling so the United States doesn't default on its debt. Those two things are things to watch. More bank failures could lead to higher mortgage rates, also more trouble for commercial real estate. And then if we were to default on our debt on a national federal level, we would see a lot of pain, recession, much higher interest rates, and maybe even a true correction, technical correction in the housing market. So things are different, but things are normal or more normal than they were during COVID. We're entering that normalization period. We're on that back end of things. Things are going to continue to normalize over the next 12 to 18 months. And we're personally excited to see that. It gives both buyers and sellers a better opportunity. It makes life a little bit less stressful for them and a little bit easier. You may not have, we're also seeing more bidding wars. You're not having as many bidding wars, but if you price a home well, if it's in a good location, in a good condition, your home is going to sell quickly and maybe even receive multiple offers. New construction is on fire. We're not seeing a ton of that in St. Pete. There's just not, or even in Pinellas, there's not a lot of land. So there's some infill development, but the most home developments are happening in Riverview, Lakewood Ranch, Bradenton, Parrish, Palmetto, pretty much the just south or west and north of where we are. And so if you're a buyer, now's a fairly good time because things have normalized. There's more inventory in the market and interest rates are coming down. Interest rates are expected, as I said, to continue to decline. So, there's a trick on waiting. A lot of people have to buy for various reasons. You're having a child, you're moving, job relocation. But if you have an option, waiting just slightly may be advantageous to you versus if you're a seller, there's such low inventory that I would suggest getting on the market, taking advantage of this seller season, especially as we're seeing a real increase in showing traffic. So long story short, the market is normalizing. Things are returning to a post-COVID normal that resembled the pre-COVID times. And the biggest issue we have is affordability, which is directly tied with mortgage interest rates and inventory. So the more inventory we have, the lower interest rates, the better affordability we're going to have. And I think we've seen on our team, a lot of people, a lot of our buyers are looking across the bridge, over the Skyway, into Palmetto, Parrish, Riverview, Lakewood Ranch, Bradenton. People are moving out because they're getting priced out of St. Pete and even Pinellas to some extent. But rents also have come down, and the rent growth appreciation is much slower than it once was. So housing affordability is slightly, very kind of on the edges, getting better. I want to talk briefly about commercial because that's probably where more of the concern is. Here in Pinellas and in St. Pete in particular, commercial real estate is still a very strong sector. What you're hearing about in New York, San Francisco, Chicago, it's just not happening here. People are leaving those cities and coming here. So we have a net in-migration, which is really what commercial real estate is based on, is population growth and migration patterns. So overall, our fundamentals are still very strong. Interest rates have risen, which have put in some pressure on cap rates, which you can think about as kind of a metric for return on investment. So cap rates are coming down. But again, this is, as I talked about in residential, this is part of that normalization trend. Things got a little crazy with COVID and artificially low interest rates. Things got a little frothy. Things are returning to normal. So we're seeing cap rate expansion. So cap rates are going up, prices are going down. And that's a normal to see in a normalizing market. Interest rates are going to have a huge effect on commercial going forward, as I've talked about, the other two things that we're worried about in commercial, the federal debt limit, ceiling limit, and more importantly, the regional banks. So regional banks that are failing, there's a contagion happening, and it's affected with or correlated with the interest rate increases we're seeing. And so as these regional banks fail, even the ones that are not directly affected, they've become worried about their balance sheets and they've become much more conservative. Credit or capital is harder to come by. They're lending less and their lending standards are much higher. So it's getting harder and harder to get financing on the commercial side, which is also leading to those higher cap rates and lower prices. We're not talking major changes. We're just talking about right now a growing trend. If the banking crisis continues, however, you could see additional pressure on commercial properties. Sector is very important. What kind of commercial? So multifamily is doing still relatively well, as is industrial. Retail's been hit, but not as bad as office. Office is taking the brunt of it. As we know, work from home or flexible work environments have emerged and become more of a part of life post-COVID. And so in big cities, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, that has a much greater effect. I wouldn't want to be an office owner of an office tower, a big office landlord in any of those major cities. They're seeing values come down by 60%, 40, 60, really high double-digit numbers. We're not seeing anything like that here in St. Pete and Pinellas. And here in St. Pete, we have very low vacancy rates on Class A office space and even Class B office space. So we have a supply and demand mismatch here, which is helping to support some of our office space. But you have to be careful when it comes to office space if you're looking to purchase. If you're looking for a primary use, very different from an investment use. Overall, the commercial real estate market, again, normalizing, but there's some signs to watch. There are a lot of economists and financial firms that are predicting to see more commercial real estate losses and more pain in the commercial real estate space because of interest rates. The way that commercial mortgages work or loans work, they come due every 5-10 years. And so you're going to see more of that turn when people go to refinance. They're going to be refinancing into higher rates, which could affect their bottom line, which could force them to sell, recapitalize at lower numbers. So there's a lot of interesting things happening in that space. Again, the biggest thing to watch there is regional banks, as that's where most of the commercial lending locally takes place. So long story short, for everything in the real estate market, things are normalizing. Things are getting back to normal. Low inventory, prices are slowly climbing for residential, prices are slowly declining for commercial, lack of inventory across the board. But at the end of the day, people have to buy and sell real estate for a whole variety of reasons. And here at Spitzer Rowan, we're here to help you through any real estate transaction you have. We do sales, leasing, and property management for both residential and commercial properties. And we'd love to help you with your transaction. Enjoy the newsletter and look forward to chatting with you next month.